I swear that I learn as much from the new teachers as they learn from me. Our job as the mentors and me as the induction coordinator is to just make sure I'm pointing them in the right direction. And then they have all this energy and all this creative knowledge they brought from the universities that they're able to bring in and infuse in the culture of a school.
Welcome to Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast proudly presented by STS Education. I'm Alex Inman, founder of Educational Collaborators.
And I'm Bob Cerruti, founder of the EduTech Group. We're here to bring educators together, helping them unlock the full potential of learning through technology.
Tune in every other week as we connect with education leaders and dive deep into topics that matter to you, delivering actionable ideas straight to your school. Welcome to the show. Hey everyone, Bob and I always try to do our best to make this tangible and useful for you in these episodes. If you're not already following us on LinkedIn, we have a relatively new page for Learning Through Technology podcast. That's the name of the page on LinkedIn. If you follow that page, you're going to get a lot of the content from our thought leadership newsletter, which includes like a little bit of background, some additional resources from the folks who are on the podcast, as well as like, what can I do now? Opportunities to sort of put what we talk about in the podcast right into practice right away in your school or district. So if you haven't already, join us and subscribe or follow our page on LinkedIn. So today, Bob, we've got a really interesting guy. I'm excited about our guest today. So Mark Urwick, who we brought on to kind of talk about technology integrated in education, we found out that he was also the leader of the new teacher orientation or new teacher training for their district. And as we looked into it a little bit, this looks really fascinating. So I have a lot of questions to ask about that.
Alex, I'm shocked that you have a lot of questions to ask our guest. It has me thinking as well, when I started in educational technology, I worked in private industry for years. One of the schools that I worked with early on had a new teacher orientation that lasted a day. So I sat through the whole thing and didn't realize it at the time, but I'm shocked now and looking back at it that there was more time spent with the treasurer on how you get paid. And there was more time spent on how you make claims and benefits and take time off than there was about how to teach students, what tools we have available. And I'm not talking about, I go back to the times of stone tablets. There was technology back then, 20 years ago, 18 years ago. So I'm really excited to learn about structured program that goes over a period of time for these teachers and the work that Mark has done with them.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this episode right around the time that we are releasing it, it's the beginning of the school year. It's new teacher time. And I'm kind of curious to know how many of our listeners had the experience like Bob described, which is very, very similar to what I had as well, or if it's more similar to what I believe we're going to learn a little bit more about that Mark is doing. So let's get into it. What do you say?
Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode. We are excited again. We have another wonderful guest on the show today. Mark Urwick is a social studies teacher at R.J. Frank Academy of Marine Science and Engineering in Oxnard, California, whom Educational Collaborators and STS Education have all been working with for about a year on a really exciting STEM lab. But that's not why we brought Mark here. We brought Mark here because he is a spectacular, experienced user of technology in his classroom and his career of teaching. And we're very, very fortunate to have him on the show. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, I've been teaching in the Oxnard Elementary School District since 2001.
And there's a little bit more. I'm going to ask about this a little bit later on in the show, but are you the district leader or coordinator for new teacher training?
It's called induction. So yes, I'm the induction coordinator for the Oxnard School District, and I work with the Ventura County Office of Education. So really the liaison between usually we have maybe 30 or 40 teachers going through the program that are clearing their credential and the district office. So I make sure they make it into the classes and they complete the coursework, and I even teach some of the classes for them.
Nice.
So, Mark, I want to ask a little bit about the name of the school. It sounds like the kind of school I'd want to go to, the R.J. Frank Academy of Marine Science and Engineering. So you're a social studies teacher there. Tell us a little bit about the school, because it's not like Oxnard Middle School or whatever, and a bit about how your social studies teaching fits in there.
So the Oxnard School District is a K-8 school district. I'm at a traditional junior high middle school setting. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we had an MSAP grant, which 3 of the middle schools in Oxnard also had the same grant. And we had money available to become an academy. So we looked at what our focus was going to be, and we had some discussions. And our school decided that marine science with the Channel Islands and all the wonderful things happening off our coast, we were going to look at marine science and then also engineering. So we now have a really good marine science elective. Kids actually go out to the Channel Islands that take this elective in 7th and 8th grade. And then we have an amazing robotics team on campus. Poem Hannah is one of the best teachers, I think, in the county when it comes to teaching robotics and coding. And it's a double classroom, and a lot of our energies were put into that. And then we also have, you probably heard of this before, but we have a really good STEAM lab that's being used by especially 6th grade. So the STEAM lab gives kids an opportunity to do 3D printing. All of that was created through the MSAP grant. So it took about 3 years to get everything up and running, kind of change the culture of the school. And I even got to go to Harvard twice for a week during the summer, which was amazing, through Project Zero. And we took a number of teacher leaders out to do this. And this is when I was a teacher on special assignment. So it's an amazing school with the electives that we offer. Kids really get an opportunity to do a lot of STEM-based activities.
So I'm a big fan of cross-curricular instruction, but help me understand how maybe technology might fit into social studies and how that fits into the larger kind of marine and engineering program.
Sure. So we gathered as a team through the MSAP grant, really got a lot of the technology pieces going because this was before the pandemic and we're beginning to learn a lot of the technology. But we started doing things across the curriculum with project-based learning. That became one of the themes that went across from all the different disciplines. And then also visible thinking routines. So you're looking at a picture and you're
Project Zero, right?
Yeah. So Project Zero I'm a big proponent of Project Zero. I've been using the Out of Eden platform for maybe 6 or 7 years. And I've actually been doing trainings throughout the county on how to use this program. So a lot of those kind of pieces fit together. As far as your question was about how am I using this with social studies, I have done some project-based learning, and that's something that I like to do with the kids, especially when you have a chance to break the kids into groups and let them choose. And I find that to be very valuable. Rather than having everybody do the same technology platform, you let kids decide, do they want to use a project-based learning with technology, or do they want to do it more with like making posters and things like that, and giving them opportunities to do that. There's a lot of training that we had through Project Zero, actually. We had people flying out from the East Coast and would come and do a training in our district on this. And that was one of the main focal points that we had.
Mark, I want to talk a bit about Project Zero. So I don't know about our listeners, but I'm not very familiar with it. I've only heard of it a bit tangentially. And I want to know more about Project Zero in the Open Canopy platform, which our dear executive producer tells me also used to be known as Out of Eden Learn. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. I had the opportunity to go back on a workshop to Harvard for about 5 days. And one of the workshops that I went to, they had the people leading Out of Eden Learn. And it was from Project Zero, which is like a big umbrella through Harvard, of course, the number one university in the world with a huge endowment. And it was really nice as a West Coast teacher to bring a team from Oxnard Elementary School District and be able to go over there and see what they had to offer. And this is the one takeaway that I had from that whole 5 days of being over there with a bunch of workshops that I've been using consistently for 10 years with my ELD class and my social studies classes. But real quick, Out of Eden Learn it's an opportunity for students to engage with other students around the world. I think they have 70 countries. I looked it up. There were 70,000 students that have participated. And they follow a award-winning New York Times journalist, Paul Solopek, as he walks from East Africa, following the course of human migration all the way down to the tip of Argentina. So that's a really cool platform that I'd never heard about, and now I'm addicted to. I really love many of the elements of it. Again, you're looking at East Africa, and he follows it all the way through China. I think right now he's in China, heading into Russia, but he talks about traveling through Turkey and Syria and all the different countries he's traveled to. And we're interacting with him in our groups.
And how do students use that platform? Like, what are they doing on that platform as they're interacting?
Yeah. So again, when you hear that, you're thinking like, hey, what kind of platform? Yeah. I mean, I can see some concerns that would come up with this. It's a closed platform that's kind of like a social media platform where it's about an 8 to 12 week program. And there's 6 footsteps that I have been using with the students at the first level. And I usually do the first level with them in the fall. I think actually I got an email a few days ago saying they're going to be opening it up in September. But what they do is they start off by creating an avatar in foot step one. They create an avatar and they come up with a name, and it looks a little like a Facebook style platform. And again, they're not putting their real name. It ends up being a closed platform. So just the 6, 7, 8 different groups that are around the world are in this platform. But the beauty of it is that I'm interacting with schools from Thailand and Vietnam and China and from Australia. We had a rich private school from Mexico, near Mexico City. It was really cool being able to interact. I would see these huge 2-story houses and these lakes, and my students are interacting with them. We even had a school from Jordan. And I remember one of the students commenting on, it's not all just tents and camels here. And the kids start talking about video games and realizing they have so much in common. So they're interacting with kids at the same grade level. And Out of Eden team, I usually work with a lady named Shea, who's been really helpful. And she led the workshop 10 years ago. And I've stayed in touch with her. But you're interacting with kids at the same age level. So I'm working with 7th graders. So I'll have, maybe 5th grade to 8th grade. It'll be in the similar grade range. Most of them are 6th and 7th graders that I'm working with all around with these maybe 10 walking groups. So they set off the first footstep where they create their avatar. They come up with a name. I usually tell them a color, an adjective, an animal, pink, fluffy unicorn, or, whatever, bouncy kangaroo. They come up with really, sometimes they're McDonald's French fries.
Pink Fluffy Unicorn, ironically, is Bob's online profile name. So that's great.
That's kind of how it starts. And then there's 5 more footsteps to go with it. And you interact with each other the whole way, where you start off with something that you do, like you watch a video or you learn about Paul and where he is and questions. And then you post something up there and then you react to that. And it's in a safe environment.
That's great. I think I can intuit some of this from your description, but here a little more explicitly. I know one of the sort of core principles of Project Zero is making learning visible. And so let's go beyond the platform even. How has your experience with Project Zero and making learning visible impacted like your courses and your thinking routines, particularly like in your ELD classes?
So yeah, especially at ELD, I actually wrote up all my standards in ELD and then took the Out of Eden Learn. And it's now called Open Canopy. They just changed the name a few months ago. And I actually went through and say, here's the listening, here's the speaking, here's the reading, here's the writing. And then there are some pieces on the ELD standards that deal with interacting in a digital format and all those different aspects. But the one thing they really emphasize is slowing down and looking deeper, like you say, with visible thinking routines. So in footstep 2, they do a neighborhood map where you actually draw a picture of your neighborhood without putting down your actual address and things like that, obviously. You're drawing your neighborhood and kind of talking about the different areas in your neighborhood. And this is something I even did through the writing project and the South Coast Writing Project. You do something where you draw your neighborhood and you tell stories about your neighborhood that are on the map. And you write about those stories. But the kids then could see a map. Hey, this kid lives next to a mosque or a temple or the jungle or places that most of our students are not living next to. And they're telling stories about a dog crashing through the garden and ruining the garden. And they're writing some story about what happened in their neighborhood. But especially with footstep 3, where you go out and take a picture and upload it. So they want you to like look up at something that you normally don't look up at. It could be a street light or the stars or one of the rockets that we fly from California. That kids from the Philippines don't see that as much as we do out here by Vandenberg Air Force Base. Or it could be looking down where you've never really noticed the weird tile thing that's in your mom's kitchen that has this intricate pattern. So the kids are looking for detail. They're observing the detail and then they're sharing that detail in a digital platform with each other and then learning how to comment appropriately. And they even give them like very specific sentence frames. My ELD kids really use these on how to respond academically to kids in other countries about things that they're posting.
Nice. Thank you. Was I the only person who was singing Who Are the People in Your Neighborhood from Sesame Street in their head when you were doing that?
You were the only one singing that.
When you get to documenting the everyday, that could be your thing. This is my thing, is, the songs we sing around the kitchen table. You should participate. It's a good opportunity.
Mark, you've been doing this for 10 years now. How did you get started in it? And how can teachers who have heard you talk about the great results from it, how can they get started with this platform?
I know that people can go online and just basically Google Out of Eden Learn or the new name, the Open Canopy, and they can find a bunch of resources there. I believe that Sophia is putting some links, so those will be available. There's a 9-page handbook that's pretty easy to find if you just look at it. It's all in color. So it's easy to print out and share with other people if you want to have it in a print version. But it's pretty self-explanatory. They tell you what to do. They give examples of it. I'd be happy to work with any teachers that wanted to get in contact with me and share resources and things too. I have some items on Canvas that I can share with them. But it's a pretty open platform that you can look at. Again, this is all free. This is from Harvard, where they've spent the money to build this, and it's part of that Project Zero platform. And there's lots of other resources. But I think just Googling the Open Canopy and then looking at the resources and how to get started, there's some handouts on there.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit here and move us into your background with ESL students and classes. And I don't think we've talked to anybody yet where we specifically talked about technology as it pertains to acquisition of language and how it can improve student language skills in that specific area. So can you tell us a bit about the benefits or just how you've seen technology evolve with ESL students and what it does to accelerate their acquisition?
So I've been an ELD teacher for probably the last 4 years. I've had one ELD class. And even though we really bring the classes together and say, I'm going to be teaching kind of the middle level group of kids that they're reading at a certain level. So I don't have second grade all the way to, you're kind of targeting a certain level within ELD. But even though we do that, the kids have very different needs because you're looking at their listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And let's say I'm working on something with reading comprehension, and I have one kid that's feeling like it's too slow, and I have another kid that's feeling like it's too hard. Using technology provides a platform where I can have the students use it at different levels, and I'm able to walk around and monitor. So I picked various programs. I like vocabulary. I think the hip hop rap pieces that go with that, Schoolhouse Rock, the Conjunction Junction, and all. So we remember that in the 70s and early 80s, they said that, hey, this is just a waste of money. Why are we doing this? And then they realized that when our generation got to, hey, this is really important. This is how I learn what it takes to be a bill or my multiplication. So I use some technology pieces like that, but kids can use it at different levels.
Nice. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this. So this is the time of year where Educational Collaborators provides probably more PD in August than we do the rest of the year combined. And there's always a challenge about how much time there is for all the things that teachers need to talk about at the beginning of the year. And that is even beside new teachers. So I'm curious to know, you gave us a little bit before, describe your new teacher training program. I'm going to ask more about technology later on, but just describe the program so that we kind of understand what are teachers learning, going through, what are your priorities and goals, that kind of stuff.
So in the Ventura County, almost all the school districts in Ventura County are part of the Ventura County Office of Education's induction program run by Dr. Joy Springer, who is based at VCOE. And I go there once a month for meetings with all the other coordinators from the districts. And we learn what's coming up, what are the next pieces that are going on. And it's all based on the cycle of inquiry, where the new teachers are learning to go through that inquiry process and look at their lessons and to do more in-depth kind of observations and reflections. Now, they've already learned the pedagogy in their credential programs. Now they're actually in a classroom. So they have 2 years where they have a 1 hour a week of a mentor, and I help arrange the mentors for the school district so that each teacher has a mentor. And that's kind of their just-in-time mentor, the person they can go to for all those questions, even like the copy code or all those different things that are out there.
How long do they keep that mentor?
So they keep the mentor for the 2 years. So I help them with the classes. I help them with the cycle of inquiry that they do on their portfolio. They turn in 2 portfolios or 2 ILPs, we call them, individual learning plans that are once each semester for 2 years. And these are not long. They're 5-page documents where they just kind of look at their lessons. They work with their mentor and they talk about, how do I see what I taught and then reflect on that and change and then try again. So that whole inquiry process, it's so important in business. It's also important in education. They meet with me maybe twice a year or twice a semester. They meet with me and we all talk together. And we're doing this more in person and not through Zoom as much anymore, which is wonderful. But then I get to connect with them. And then they meet with their mentor once a week.
Okay. And are mentors other teachers from within the buildings?
Usually the mentor will be a site-based mentor. Sometimes if you have like one Spanish teacher at a middle school, it might have to be a Spanish teacher that's a veteran Spanish teacher at another middle school. But the number one thing is you have to have a similar credential, and then you want to have, hopefully at the same site. It's almost always at the same site.
Hey there, it's Sophia, executive producer for the show. You know those moments when the episode ends and you're thinking, man, I wish we could talk more about this. Well, guess what? We can. We got this amazing community over on LinkedIn. It's where we share all the good stuff, sneak peeks, cool resources, and quick activities to try out in your school. So here's what I want you to do. Grab your phone, head to LinkedIn, and search for our Learning Through Technology podcast page. Hit that follow button, and boom, you're in. Can't wait to see you there.
So if the induction program is coordinated by VCOE, the Ventura County Office of Education, so are then almost all public districts in the county going through that same new teacher orientation program?
This is done through the state of California.
Okay. And so I imagine there are sort of new teacher protocols that are either Oxnard School District specific or even RL Frank specific. How do new teachers understand those aspects that are unique to your district and school? With regards to technology, with regards to kind of building culture, you mentioned some of the grants and the resources that have been provided. Those are unique to buildings and district. So how do you do that?
So at RJ Frank, we might have a culture where we're saying, hey, we want to focus more on the visible thinking routines, and that's been part of the PD. And we want programs that kind of get kids doing more project-based learning. So if you have a focus for the school, and each school will have a slightly different focus, but there's also a district mission and vision that we go under. But each school has its own kind of unique culture as well. So with regards to the induction program, I find that a lot of the new teachers are coming with much better technology skills and aware of how to use like our learning management platform of Canvas, which we use in our district and we use through VCOE. So a lot of times the newer teachers know this more than some of the veteran teachers, and they're bringing in like, hey, let's try Nearpod or let's try new things like that. And the mentor is working with them to make sure, hey, let's make sure this stays within the culture of the school and the vision of the district. So I do think there's a good convergence there. I mean, I swear that I learn as much from the new teachers as they learn from me. Our job as the mentors and me as the induction coordinator is to just make sure I'm pointing them in the right direction. And then they have all this energy and all this creative knowledge that they brought from the universities that they're able to bring in and infuse in the culture of a school.
Nice. I like the long-term approach to this. It's so much better than there's still a lot of districts who new teacher orientation is 2 days before everybody gets the same big dump and you set up your classroom.
Yeah, I was handed, I started in 94 in Torrance, and it was a good district, but they handed me keys and they said, don't send kids to the office the first week. And I remember that, what? Like, I mean, I loved working in the South Bay, and Torrance was a wonderful first start. They did a good job of kind of getting me up and running, and I got a lot of my ELD skills there with all the different languages. But I think that was true of all across the state of California. I think that in the 90s, they didn't really have this program. Now we have 2 years of teachers having a mentor and having some structure available. And even if I don't want to go to a meeting after school, at the end of the day, it's nice to have that structure available, that support available that I don't think was there when I started teaching in the 90s.
With the new teacher shortage and so many teachers leaving the industry, do you have data that says that this induction program is increasing teacher retention?
Absolutely. And I'd be more than happy to get you in touch with the people that can give you that data. I mean, so yeah, when I go to the meetings, we absolutely show that there is a much greater teacher retention when they go through induction. They have that connection to the mentor, they have the support of the county. And most teachers do stay in teaching when they, we're losing less teachers, I think, than we have in the past. And it's a great profession. I mean, I'm now in my mid 50s, and I find that a lot of people don't really like their jobs when they're heading towards, not that far from retirement. And they're kind of like, okay, I can do this. I like what I do. I mean, school starts in 2 weeks from tomorrow. I'm going to have students, and I'm excited. I'm excited for another year. I'm excited to be in the classroom. I like going to work each day. I don't know that that's true with a lot of the workforce out there. It's a great profession, and we're actually paid a little better than people think now. I mean, once you get 10 years experience, you're heading towards 6 figures in a lot of these districts here. So it's not a terrible position. If you have 2 incomes and you want to buy a house and raise a family, this is a job that you can do all that, in my opinion.
Mark, I'll talk about a little different part of the teacher induction. And I'm throwing this at you, so I know you don't know this is coming. If you don't have an answer, then I'd like you just to talk a bit about your thoughts on the topic. But we did an episode with Chris Kalinsky near the beginning of our run. And Chris and I remember this distinctly. Chris said he'd like to see on teacher orientation or induction that every teacher be given an AI account so that they could use that account to create lesson plans or to use as a thought partner to develop their own way of teaching with some help. And I just thought it was a great idea. And I would be first in line as a tech director to start assigning those accounts. I wondered if you and your school or the Ventura County Office of Education have given thought to just not a thought that, oh, we're going to assign AI accounts, but it's coming. Are you going to be in the front, in the back? Has it been something you've talked about?
Let me answer that question as a middle school social studies teacher, not through VCOE or induction or anything. But absolutely, that's a question that I'm very interested in. And I have friends that work for Oracle or Citrix or a lot, that I ask questions to my peers from high school. I found that even in our district, we're getting trained in Chat GPT, especially, which is a fairly user friendly. So I'm teaching everything from 500 to 1500 world history. I want to be able to pull in some lessons that deal with grammar and things. And I ran a quick little worksheet on Joan of Arc with irregular past tense verbs. 8 seconds later, I have 10 questions with the irregular past tense verb missing. It's amazing what AI can do when you look at something like ChatGPT. So I started showing the students the power of being able to do this, and that a lot of this curriculum that we're building could be built through something with AI where I want something very specific and it can build this for us. And we might have to manipulate it a little bit and make sure that all the answers are correct. So I think that using AI for something like that has been very successful. I think teachers are beginning to learn how to do that. And we're also showing our students that if they just put things into AI and ChatGPT, it's very easy for us to know they're cheating. So I think we need to be very transparent about that when it deals with students. So as far as me creating my own AI, I'm not quite ready to know what that looks like, but using ChatGPT, I'm very comfortable talking about and sharing my experience with.
So you said two things that were very refreshing to me in there. One is the new teachers seem to be more comfortable with technology because 10 years ago, everybody thought teachers coming in would be more comfortable with technology. They were digital natives, and it wasn't really true. Just because they knew how to watch YouTube didn't make them experts in technology. So it's refreshing to know that that gap is closing with new teachers. The second is your statement that if a student just uses ChatGPT to produce like a 2-paragraph essay or 3-paragraph essay, you could tell right away that it's there. And I've heard from so many teachers, they're like, it's cheating. But if you read it, you know it's a generative AI kind of answer. So it's nice to hear that indeed there are teachers out there who understand it's just copying out of an encyclopedia again. If you aren't understanding it, it looks the same. Are you seeing from these new teachers, I suspect in the next couple of years, all the teachers that come to you fresh out of college will have used one of the AIs in order to graduate. Like that's been part of, whether it's part of their curriculum or not, they've used it to complete their own work. So have you started seeing any of that yet or not quite?
Yeah. So I'm hearing that teaching the next generation of employees to be AI curators is the term that I've been hearing, where it's learning how to ask the right questions to the AI, not how to get the right results. So I do see that the new teachers, obviously, they're much more comfortable. I have a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they're both actually still in school. And absolutely, they're able to use AI and talk about what they're doing in college. So I do find that the younger generation, teachers that are in their 20s or second career teachers even that are coming into the profession, tend to be more comfortable. I do think that's true. Let me give you one quick example here. So what I want to do is make things visible for the students, and I do this for the teachers too, where is China a competitor or are they a rival of the US? Is it something where we want both countries to win economically, or do we want just one to win and the other one not to do? So I asked that question, and that's a hard question. And we're studying ancient China, I'm talking about current events, and I put that into ChatGPT and I asked it a question, and then I have the students go through and highlight what are the ones that say that we want it to be a competitor or we want it to be a rival, and they're able to see what the AI produces, and then they're able to say, what does this information actually mean? So I think a lot of times students or even teachers will just put something into AI, it'll spit something out that looks pretty, but you're not really understanding that whole process and what the product is.
What challenges are you finding with integrating technology into the classroom?
We had an iPad, and now we're moving to a Chromebook. So the kids love to have this toy in front of them. And it's very easy for them to figure out how to get through the firewalls and play games. And it looks like everyone's paying attention. But this one student in the back, I'm noticing that they're actually on Roblox or whatever. They found some way to get into playing Minecraft in the back of the class. And that's frustrating. So I think that being able to empower people to have their own devices and to get onto the internet and start exploring, but when they wander off, like we might do on this podcast, and how do you get the person to go back to the center? I think you guys see this all the time. So I think that's really hard. I also do think that we spend too much time sometimes on technology as the answer to everything. And sometimes it's good for kids to get out a piece of paper and pencil. I started drawing maps of medieval manners because I saw another teacher doing it. And I'm like, hey, that's much better than the digital lesson I had. And it was one of the best lessons I had where, how does it deal with field rotation and where people live and the whole social structure of feudalism, and drawing it on a piece of paper and coloring it in and following directions. And then nobody was complaining about their pencil running out of power or their paper turning off. A lot of it is like making sure the iPads are charged, or the Chromebooks, we're moving to Chromebooks, are charged. That becomes hard. They break them. So I think that's one of the pieces out there, is that kids already have so much technology, and do I want to just give them too much more?
So what power do you have over choices in that? And then how do you solve some of those challenges with regards to too much tech or tech for distractions? You're a well-seasoned teacher. What advice do you give those folks who they may know how to use it in their lesson design, but there's a classroom management question about this as well?
I do think everything in moderation. I think it's one of those things where you want to have the kids working on paper maps and then working on maybe their ed puzzle or their Quizlet assignment, and kind of mixing things up for students. It is a little too easy as a teacher to just assign things to kids, and then you walk around the room and watch them do it. You're like, well, what a great lesson I had. I'm such a good teacher. The kids need direct instruction. Kids need to be able to learn from the teacher and with the teacher. And I do think there's a little bit of a rabbit hole if you're just giving too much technology, then kids are just glued to the screen all the time. That's not necessarily healthy. So I do think you just kind of mix things up. Maybe Monday's the day where we're doing a lot of the electronic journalism and creating blogs or doing your PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever you're doing. And then you kind of mix it up throughout the day. And kids also, their attention span is, you're not doing projects where you're doing the same thing for 50 minutes. You might do 15 minutes of this and 15 minutes of that. And they're learning with 3 or 4 screens, and they're very good at multitasking now.
Yeah. And I'm glad to hear you say, kind of come back to the whole project piece, because I spent 22 years as a tech director, but technology for technology's sake is just bad education. And we're in educational technology, not in technology. And I found that if you gave students meaningful, authentic projects with voice and choice, the technology sort of found its way in. And yeah, we needed to do some orientation around that. And we did have a technology scope and sequence. So there are some key sort of technology literacies we were supposed to teach throughout the year. And I could find projects that made it better. But I found that their distraction and the quality use of technology, distractions went down and quality use went up if they had something meaningful to do as part of that.
Let me give you one good example that actually Sophia Gaines helped me with. Was so in ELD, we have a curriculum and we follow necessarily a curriculum out there. And I gave you some examples of ELD of other programs that I used to kind of pre-teach or reteach some of the things that we're looking at. But I also really think technology, and I think this is one of the areas where teachers need more support on how to do this, but you can give them something like Code Combat, which is a little bit of a complicated program that we use where the kids are moving a character around and they're coding to move a character around through a map, and they're going through different levels. And it's a gamification of it, right? I know you know this, but what I did with the students was I said, hey, this is what I want everybody to do, levels 1 through 5. If you get to level 20, here's the rewards. So I'm going to give you this open-ended opportunity to do more than I'm asking. And I think a lot of students see that I have 20 minutes of homework or I have something, and they're doing the minimum they need to do to placate the teacher and show their parent that on Canvas, all the assignments are done. I want kids to do more. So the Code Combat was a great example, and it was not the kids I expected. It's like, Jorge did an amazing job, or Jeffrey was, these 2 kids that usually weren't engaged and they're kind of like doing the minimum, all of a sudden they spent 10 hours over the weekend and they got to level 20 and then found the wizard and they're like so excited, but they also learned all these coding skills that went with it. and they got a reward. I don't know, I bought them a piece of pizza, whatever. It's a nice little intrinsic, those external rewards, those external motivators definitely work for students, but it didn't cost me that much. And these kids all of a sudden exploded. They got a little extra credit. They felt really good about themselves. And that could be the tipping point where they realized, hey, maybe I am a coder. That's something I wanted to do, where they felt school was boring and stupid and I didn't really like it. And now they realize they have this opportunity. So I think this is true of video production. I think this is true of AI and creating things. I think it's true of learning how to code and game and all that kind of, if they can see those connections and do more than what the teacher is asking, not the minimum that the teacher is asking. And technology can do that better than just pen and paper, I think.
So, Mark, we have some short form questions that we look for just to wrap up our time together and to leave our audience with some things to think about. We have not had somebody so prepared, though, for this first question that we ask everybody is you. What advice would you give to other educators who want to boost learning in their classroom? How best could they use technology to make the needle move?
So are you looking at new teachers, veteran teachers, and all together?
I think both ways, because as you said, you could spend decades in the classroom, but the technology environment evolves constantly. So you could have a 20-year veteran come in and say, what can I do differently? Or a new teacher.
We tend to be a lot of different islands. So let's say there's 50 teachers in my school, and I have 4 or 5 that are in my same department. So instead of just me trying to do what I can do in my classroom and keep reinventing the wheel here and trying to figure things out, go and see what's working in other classrooms. Share with teachers. We have a lot of PLCs, professional learning communities, in our district. And I think that's something good that I know a lot of other districts that are doing this, but I think the Oxnard School District is doing an excellent job of this, where they're bringing us together. And I'm saying, hey, getting the kids to write an introductory paragraph, this is what's working for me. Or when I'm trying to work on kids finding their voice, this is what's working for me. Or for me, I'm trying to pre-teach vocabulary. I'm using Edpuzzle or vocabulary. I'm using some technology piece. So show me what's working in the other classrooms in similar settings, and let me borrow from all the other teachers out there and try some of these great ideas, because we have these little laboratories that are working, but then also talk about what doesn't work. And I would say, I don't think a teacher's doing a good job as a teacher if they're not failing multiple times per week. If there's not something like, wow, I'm never doing that lesson again. They're trying something new and it doesn't work, and they're learning. And then they're trying 10 other things that do work, and they're keeping 2 or 3 of them to use year after year. And I tell the new teachers in the county and in my district, I've met teachers that are first-year teachers that have had 20-year experience, where they're doing the same thing they did as a first-year teacher, second-year teacher, third year. Don't be that teacher. Be the teacher that's changing things all the time. That's what keeps it interesting. This is what has me heading into my late 50s, where I still like teaching, because I'm trying new things all the time. Keep what works. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater every year, but you want to keep what works and then kind of build on it, and always try adding new things, and that continual improvement that goes on. I think it keeps it fresh for you, keeps it fresh for the students, and learning from the newer teachers and the veteran teachers. Both of those work.
I think that's brilliant. There's so much wisdom in each organization that gets looked over just because people don't take the time. I think that's fantastic. All right, Mark, our last sort of big question is one that you may already have at the tip of your tongue. Maybe you need to reflect on. Who was your favorite and most impactful teacher, and why?
So I had an amazing experience where my 3rd grade teacher from 1976 at Fairview Elementary School in Goleta, it closed down with Prop 13, the school closed down. But I remember getting to know her in 3rd grade. And her name's Jan Berry. And she actually lives in Oxnard, and I've stayed in touch with her. So I'm 57 now. I stayed in touch with her, and we actually moved our induction program to have a county-wide celebration to a district-wide celebration. And I invited Jan Berry, my 3rd grade teacher, who made this huge impact on me by getting to know me and talking to me. And for some reason, I just felt very special in her classroom. And I think that inspired me to become a teacher. I invited her to come to the induction celebration for the year 2 that happened like last May. And so she came there. And I'm introducing my teacher that's made this impression on me. The whole point being with these new teachers, how can you be this Jan Berry? How can you be this person that like made such an impact that you're talking almost 50 years later, you have a student reaching out to you that wants to stay in touch with you and wants to invite you and talks about teaching. How can you be that person? How can you make that impression on somebody? I don't remember some of my other teachers in elementary. I don't even remember 4th grade, or I have other teachers that were really important, but I don't remember their names. I can tell stories for hours about her classroom. What is that connection that happened? And those connections are so important. She lives in Oxnard now. It's hilarious that she lives in Oxnard up the street from where I teach.
We have got a lot of good answers since we've been doing these podcasts, but I think I like yours the best.
I think so too.
That was a special day for me when that happened. I mean, here,
I think that is the most joyful answer to that question we've ever gotten. How fun. How fun. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining us today. This was a great, great conversation. And it's great to get to know one of the teachers at RJ Frank. We've been working with your principal now for about a year and a half. And so it's really great to meet you. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Alex, I'm going to barge in here at the end to talk a bit about this because I know you were very interested in the conversation with Mark about the new teacher induction and how it went. But I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
Both for fun, pop culture reference, but our first reference to Schoolhouse Rock. I mean, that's serious, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And I is well documented in our episodes and on this podcast, not the best student. But something that struck me was I remember Schoolhouse Rock. I remember how a bill goes through Congress. I remember conjunction, junction, what's your function? Because that was how I learned, I guess. And it's true to this day. My daughter says that I have a soundtrack to my life because I'm always listening to music. And I listen to music to either get to the mood I want to be in or to get out of the mood that I'm in. So it's true. And it struck me as it's how we learn that's important. And it seems like Mark had some ideas about how best to reach those students with his different ideas on how to reach them.
I agree. I was excited to learn that they were doing work with Project Zero out of Harvard. It's a great program, and it just gives teachers a lot of tools similar to, we had John Cripple on the show and he told us about edu protocols. That's in an even more sort of tangible, sort of practical sort of strategy. But this notion of giving students different ways to demonstrate their knowledge and make their learning visible is pedagogy driving the use of technology rather than technology driving pedagogy. And I like that orientation in what he gave us. And I think Oxnard is very, very fortunate to have somebody like Mark leading their new teacher orientation, which I know I totally took up too much time with, but I was just so fascinated with the depth of that program and the opportunity to integrate culture into that. I just thought it was fun.
It was.
All right, Bob. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode. Again, if you guys are interested in learning more about this, please go to stsed.com/podcast, and you can sign up for our newsletter if you like there. Have a great day.
Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast, is brought to you by STS Education, a Pacific OneSource company. To learn more about how educators can leverage technology to drive successful educational outcomes, check us out at www.stsed.com. Connect with us by searching for Learning Through Technology in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. On behalf of the team at STS Education, thanks for joining us.